So one of the things you can do as I'm getting on Lakeshore Drive and to show you this beautiful view of Chicago on Lakeshore Drive, 45 miles an hour is very good speed on Lakeshore Drive. And if you get rid of congestion, things move and you don't have to speed up the speed limit. See, the problem is congestion, and then you have places where you get all this congestion, then you break three and you're going faster. And the reason with trains that they're very inefficient of who's going to get on and who's going to get off. And they need to stage people on the train better, that people that move towards the door and people can get on and off and position them correctly, whether it's the RTA or Metronet. And if you can get in and out of a station quicker, then the time that it takes to get to somewhere will be shorter. But also, it's the 0 to 60 speed on these trains. It takes a long time for them to get up to speed and a long time to slow down. So if you can improve the ability for them to slow down quicker and to speed up quicker, then again, you don't necessarily need to get super high-speed rail. But look at this view of downtown. This is incredible view of the city right here. It's just, it looks to me incredibly beautiful, this view. The ambiance right here. But you're getting into the trees from Grant Park, so... But getting back to it, if you can figure out how to reconfigure the locomotives where the train in that can move smoother and can move from 0 to 60 smoother and from 60 to 0 smoother over shorter periods, then you can get to places faster and not necessarily need to upheaval everything for high-speed rail. It might just be modifications of the trains themselves, the engines and the cars, where they can move smoother, accelerate and decelerate better over shorter periods of distance and get in and out of the terminals easier. So people doing pre-booking and everything, and so you can get in and out, that shortens everything. It's just like at airlines. If you can unload and load the planes more efficiently and figure out in airports how to do this more efficiently, then you can speed up the flights without going faster. Like, I guarantee you that's a black guy driving that car. And so, again, they're drawn to these things like a scorpion, or a scorpion to a frog, kind of. So, again, they're drawn to these things for these urges that are inside, and they don't handle their urges correctly. So they have this need for speed, but they don't departmentalize it. Go to a go-kart track. The Wisconsin Dells has good go-kart tracks. There's a great go-kart track in Buffalo Grove that they can bring down here. And then you can fly around the go-kart track. It's awesome. So if you give them ways to indulge their not appropriate habits on the highway, and you allow them to indulge them in ways that are appropriate, like take them out to Joliet Speedway and allow them to race around Joliet Speedway. They can have amateur races at Joliet Speedway. So, again, Joliet Speedway is not far from Chicago, but giving a way to get these primitive urges out of them. Me, I'm very much departmentalized. I don't do things if it's not the right place. So, riding my ATV, or when my sister bought it, first of all, I didn't know we were going to get it. They bought it. They bought snowmobiles. We had them for 1 year, and then they sold them. We had to get rid of them. So it wasn't like I had them long. But the whole point is, I would only use them in the appropriate spaces. And so, again, being able to departmentalize when you're in school. You're there for education, right? First and foremost, you're there for education. Fellowship happens during lunchtime. And then you would say gym class is more about fellowship. And then when you have projects that you work on together and they create teams, that creates fellowship as well. But it's about physical and mental education in school. They're there for their physical and mental education. And anything else is just noise. Truly, it's just noise. And so they have to remember, why am I here? What am I supposed to accomplish? And they're supposed to accomplish both their physical and mental improvement. And that's why they assess you, and you pass from first grade to second grade, and second grade to third grade. The reason we have grades is to show that people are physically and mentally achieving. And we can't just pass people. They have to make the grade. So giving them an award for showing up, great, perfect attendance. I always wanted that award for school, perfect attendance. So showing that I'm very reliable, trustworthy in that way. You can count on me to be there. So, anyways, they need to understand what they're there for, to build their physical and mental ability. And the teachers never get into their head that about their future. Yes, there's great things to do now and everything, but this is all to build you a better life tomorrow. And these are the foundational things, and they have to speak to them and get them to think as adults. Tell them to put on their adult hat. And now we're going to talk responsibilities. And now you're going to step out of your child into the adult. And we're going to talk about your responsibilities, why you're here and what you're going to achieve and what you need to achieve to have a bright future. 89% of the housing vouchers in Chicago going to black people. Well, there's something wrong about their foundational base. All these years and all the black churches and everything, and again, they haven't built good foundations. And white people have fallen greatly as well. They let their good foundations deteriorate. Listening to a thing on Singapore, how it was a British colony. And Britain was one of the most powerful empires. And they fell. The British people fell because they let themselves fall. They got lazy. And they allowed themselves to deteriorate. And they didn't work on every year trying to build better foundations, right? Jennifer Kim, Real Foundations, the firm she worked with. Still, to the day I met her and that card she gave me, it struck me. Real Foundations. Wow, that's what Jesus and the disciples and the Old Testament was about with David and Moses. Building real foundations. Not fake or fantasies, but real foundations. These people were built from the ground up. From the ground up. These were self-made men These were people that were extremely righteous and just. They were built from the ground up. They had good foundational buildings. I was guided by God. And I had a great foundational teacher. I don't think I could have had any better foundational teacher. But truly, it wasn't my mom and dad. It was God. And so, again, building people from the ground up and building these solid foundations, these real foundations. And that's why I like the Three Little Pigs. You know, the House of Straw and then what's the other one? The one's the House of Straw. Maybe the other one's the House of Wood. I don't know. I forget what the other one is. But Huff and Puff and the Wolf blows the house down, and then they build the house of brick. And he huffs and puffs and blows, and he can't blow the house down. What it's talking about, that story, The Three Little Pigs, is talking about building solid foundations. That's all the moral of the story is, about building solid foundations. And if you put together a solid foundation, then the big bad wolf can huff and puff and blow all they want, but they can never blow your house down. So the big bad wolf is the evil, the satanistic person, the demon. And so if you build them with the proper foundation, and then you give them the proper foundational supports where they have... How many people grow up in their life and hang out with their small group? Not the church. We're talking about intimate groups. Like, you have small group, and I did TNT Tuesday nights, and it was small group. And it was small group Bible study for Tuesday night, Jenna, and then the people she was with, and they were moving through the grade together as a small group. But churches don't do this, but they should set up small groups. And they move through the first grade and second grade and third grade and fourth grade, and they move through the grades together as a group, a small group. And then, yes, they're going to go to high school, and if they all go to the same high school, their small group might expand a little bit in high school. And then when they break up into college, they're going to different colleges, and they're going to make new small groups. How many churches reach out to colleges? We have University of Chicago that has a religious study, right? And they can work through the religious study program to reach out to the university and offer churches in small group. And why can't they do that through the administration? Why can't colleges, say Mississippi State or the University of Arizona, they have a church right on campus on the University of Arizona. Students went there. I didn't go that particular, but a girl that I was great friends with that I thought of dating, her name was Jennifer too, but she was not Asian. She was a white girl, but beautiful girl. And truly beautiful girl. And she went to the church on campus. And so, but the admissions department, right there, not admissions, but the student activity department. So every year they go into the registrar's office, and part of it is that they should be able to give you information on churches and small groups. Why would it be prohibited for them to give you this information? And they can have a link, and it can have Muslim temples. There's a Muslim temple at the University of Arizona, right next to the ZBT house, but it's a mosque. And they can give information for the Muslim mosque. It's on campus. I hung out with a lot of Muslims at the University of Arizona. And the mosque is on campus. And I would assume mosques have small groups too. So they can give out that. And then there's the Jamie and them went to not the rec center, but they went to the Jewish rec center, whatever they call it. I forget. But that was off campus. And then on campus at the University of Arizona, there's actually a Jewish restaurant that's right next to, I forget what building, but there's a Jewish restaurant right there. And I forget what it is. It's on campus. The nickname for the U of A was the Jew of A. I didn't make that up. The Jewish kids did. So, again, that's their title. They called it the Jew of A because there were so many Jewish people. The University of Arizona nickname was the Jew of A. And it was also a lot of trust fund kids. They called it Trust Fund University. There's a public school with tons of trust fund kids and tons of Jewish kids. And, yeah, a lot of Jewish kids that were trust fund kids, but not all of them. Not all the trust fund kids were Jewish. But anyways, the University of Arizona, they can give it out and they can find a good synagogue. And then from the synagogue, they can find a good small group. So, and then they can do interfaith stuff with small groups. Yeah, they can have the Fellowship of Christian and Jews and Fellowship of Christian Jews and Muslims, say, the Abrahamic Fellowship. And they can, with the small groups, they can have different small group fellowships. So I don't see why they can't do this, and I don't see why it can't be in public schools as well. When the kids come back to school and that they can give information out that goes back to their parents about small group programs and church programs, youth programs at the different churches and different synagogues and different mosques that might be around in that area, depending on their faith. So, again, why can't they do that? That's the whole Constitution, freedom of religion. And so they're allowed to express it. They can just toss it. They don't have to do anything with it. But it talks about going into catechism if you're Catholic, like Richard, Emily, and Alex. They did catechism. And so I forget what it's called with Jewish people, but they do the same thing. I don't know if Muslim has the same thing, but both Catholics and Jewish people go through the same thing. And that's why they have bar mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs. Once you finish this religious study, then you finish it at a certain age, and then you have your bar mitzvah or bar mitzvah. One's for males, one's for females. But it's the same thing with catechism. So I don't know about non-Catholics, but there should be the same thing, where you go through it, and usually it's your Sweet 16. Most all of them, it's when you turn 16. So your Sweet 16, and that's considering when you're turned into a pre-adult. Not quite fully an adult, but recognized as a future adult once you reach 16. And so it prepares you at that age, and that's why they call it the Sweet 16. But that's, usually affiliated with girls, but still, boys, it's the same thing. 16 Candles. Remember the movie? It's the same premise. So, again, they can offer this at all the schools, from elementary school to high school to colleges to grad schools to PhD programs. When people move around, it doesn't matter if they're from here or not. I had in my small group Hung, and he was in residency here in Chicago, and he was from California, and he was in his residency program here. And so we had at our church, NCPC, we had a lot of Asian doctors who were doing residency, both male and female. that at our church, and so they were there for their residency program, and then after the residency they tended to move on somewhere else. So we had a core group, but we also, the ones that didn't stay in Chicago, and so we had a core, but we also had a bunch of people that were there for their residency, and they were there just for several years, and then they move on to somewhere else. And so, but we did discipleship. Our church was a discipleship church, making disciples of God. And so it was a discipleship church. If anyone understands what that is, basically mentoring them to go out in the world and to present themselves as Christians, to be model Christians, to live the life and so on, like the disciples in the Bible, Paul and so on. You live this virtuous Christian life. And so it's funny how I ended up, because Lakeview wasn't a discipleship church, but Brad started at NCPC a discipleship church. And I ended up at NCPC, which was focused on discipleship. And so we had a lot of residents come through that were Asian, because a lot of people, a lot of Asians go into the medical community. And so my small group, like Jean she was an ophthalmologist or an optometrist, I think, optometrist. And then Simon, he was a dermatologist, but he specialized in cancer. And then Irene was a nurse, and so on. And so we had all these. Kaylee was a doctor, and Hung was in residency, and so on. So we had lots of people from the medical profession, from nurses to doctors, and then, all kinds of different professions within the medical industry. So, but the church was focused on discipling people, mentoring them, and bringing them to this biblical education. So when they leave the church, even if it's only after a couple years in that, they carry on this real foundation with them. And they go out to the world and, continue on, doing the good deeds, representing, God. Like Joel Osteen, the one thing he said, and I do like it, and he's talking discipleship, that when you go out, remember that you're representing God. And so when you go out into the world, carry yourself as you're representing God. What would God want you to do, and how would he want you to be represented? Or basically, remember, you're going to get judged and so on, so you're supposed to live this life. That's why we call it the living word. But what you do down here is what they do to me in Chicago and the surrounding is Antichrist. The furthest thing from living a Christian life. I mean, this is literally the Antichrist world. I mean, the last 10 years. Before that, I had hope, because I had my small group and many others that were very much focusing on living a very Christian-based life. And now, these last 10 years, since 2016, like David, my partner, and his wife, both David and his wife, highly spiritual, and both his kids, Megan and Matt, highly spiritual. And David was my partner. And my client, Jack, he's Remodelers Organization, the NARI, the National Association of Remodelers in Illinois, I think it is. NARI, N-A-R-I. But he is a devout Christian, and so is his wife, who is in a musical band, and she's a bookkeeper. She's a phenomenal bookkeeper that brings in the money, and then they do music gigs. And Jack, his wife does all these, she plays for weddings and many other things, but they're both devout Christians. So me, David, and Jack, when we had because Jack was a client, we do financial planning, but also we would talk a lot about, the Christian lifestyle. Then the funny thing is, in all of my planning meetings, we talked about spirituality and Christianity. So unlike others that might be taboo, but to all my clients, I talked about it, and David was part of it, talking about living a spiritual life. And so, again, doing these things. And my other client, which came across from David, she's a devout Christian, and she's right down here, Betsy. Her husband owns a bunch of medical practice. He's an Asian doctor, and she's a technology whiz. Truly, she's very gifted in technology, Betsy. She's Chinese, her husband's Chinese, but they're American citizens, and their kids are here, and so on and so forth, and they're American citizens, and she's a technology whiz, and we were trying to do some things with reform for the Christian Union Church that's here in Chinatown, and Betsy wanted me to particularly talk about the older couples. So we had Ming Him, which is over here. They had on the second floor of this restaurant, we had a gathering, and I was there, and it was all the Asian married couples, husband and wife, from the Union Church, and one of them was the president of Pacific Global, and it was there, and Betsy wanted me to see all of them and meet them, and we were talking about how to further the relationship between husband and wife, and how to further reform things within the church, because things were going a little bit awry. And so she wanted my input, just like my other client, Linda, and she wanted me, her church, another church, and pastor was doing some things that weren't exactly right money management wise, and the church wasn't, doing well with attracting people and so on. And so I was working with her to revamp the books and to revamp things in the church, but I was getting very deeply into churches and their finance, running the finance and structuring everything within. And two of my female clients, they have two churches, and I was inputting, and I was moving into more and more churches that way. And that's where I was going in 2016, but you threw me off the rails, and I was trying to do this foundational building of churches. And you took everything away from what God intended to be and where I was supposed to go, and you destroyed everything. And so we have the Chinese Union right here. And so the thing is, these are devout Americans, they're devout Christians, and they're highly ethical people. And so, when we talk about this thing, when we talk about other countries and that, the whole thing is that, okay, you say national security, well, aren't we supposed to do things and make sure that people truly want to be U.S. citizens and want to pledge their allegiance to the United States, protecting against all terrorists, foreign and domestic, all enemies, foreign and domestic? Shouldn't we not just give citizenship or the opportunity, but only those that are truly wanted and truly are worthy of it receive it? So I don't get it. So then we wouldn't have to worry about certain things of our internal problems. Going back to the Constitution, where following the law is mandatory and so on. the founding fathers trying to embed these things of loyalty. That's the whole point of it, loyalty. If you want to be a U.S. citizen in that, you're supposed to be following the rules, and anyone preaching, whether it's Melman Law or whatever, preaching opposite of that are doing unethical things, and the Bar Association should disbar them. Truly, disbar them. Protests, and this is why I watched the neo-Nazis come into Skokie, and yeah, there's a lot of, tension in that, but I watched them go through the court process. They went through the court process, they got their permits, and then I watched through the media them go into the park and then do their protest, and they said their things, and then they cleaned up and they left. They didn't break anything, they didn't burn anything down, and they never came back again. They said their piece and left. And I was like, well, how is that disrespectful? If people want to do certain things, they can get the permits, and then they can decide where they can speak, what time, what day. And like I said to people about with the neo-Nazis, you don't have to show. So they could go to something and just be talking to themselves. So if you disagree, you don't have to show. And let them, like a tree falling in the woods. Yes, it makes a sound, but no one hears it because no one's around, right? Out of sight, out of mind. So, again, it's like the Tea Party. They did the same thing. They get their permits, and they did. They get their permits, they go through the whole legal process, and then they decide where they can do the Tea Party. The Tea Party is about fiscal conservatism. My friend Lance, he's part of the Tea Party. Now, Lance is Jewish. It's not a religious organization. It's about fiscal conservatism. And so, responsibility. And so, they get their permits, they go into the rally, and people are told, be respectful of God's green earth, and make sure you throw out your trash and that, and leave it as it is. So the way you received it is the way you should leave it. And so the Tea Party people actually even cleaned up. It's like a green organization too, because people praise them. Not only did they usually left the area better. So part of the rally is you can do some type of tree planting, or, some type of good. You can have your members clean up the streets and work with Gateway Green or Chicago Cares or something else, and do some form of beautification. Since you're going to have all that, that's why I said with Lollapalooza, I didn't understand. I wrote to the mayor of Chicago, why isn't Boost Mobile Rock Corps part of Lollapalooza? So when they come in, they do a day of service. And all these people are coming around for all over the place, and they come in a day early and they do a day of service, and they go around the city. And these are out-of-towners. I'm talking people coming in for the music fest that are from out of town, and wherever they do the Lollapalooza show, they beautify the community. So if they do it in London, or they do it in Singapore, they do a day of service, and they pick and they break up. Like Chicago Care, we meet at Soldier Field, but they can meet at Wrigley Field. We meet at Soldier Field. Why? Because in the parking lot, there is incredible amounts of hundreds of buses. And we're broken up, and we're assigned, like we were assigned to a women's shelter one year, and then to school another year. We painted a classroom, our group, but other groups, we remodeled the whole school. We did a mural. There was a mural done outside of the school. But I did this with my Asian friends. This is my friends with Jen, not through church. And every year they would show up. And Liz and all of them, Erica and all of them for Chicago Care. And then we went into Gateway Green. And so the funny thing is, they were all beautifying Chicago. So all my friends were making Chicago more beautiful. And we emphasize this. Like, Na got into the Chicago Marathon with Team Wonderful in Hyde Park. And I ran with Team Wonderful and prepping for the marathon. And it was a whole bunch of black people. And then we went to fellowship and ate at this Sam, who used to work at Panera. His uncle, or I think his uncle, owns a restaurant in Hyde Park, and we ate there afterwards. And so, anyways, I ran with them in that, and me and Jen, and she was preparing for the marathon. I should have ran the marathon with Jennifer Kim, and again, I should have done it with her. We should have done it together. I already did it once, and I was in shape. I could have did it easily. So running the marathon would have been no big deal running it with her. So, again, these are things you can do as couples. Like, we did 3Ks together. Me and Jen, I got her into it. And first she did one without me, and I watched the dog. Na had a dog, and I watched her dog while her and Jen ran. Na finished first. Jen, came up minutes later. And, but I started running the Shamrock with Jen, and 3Ks and 5Ks with Jen. And then we started jogging together and building our fellowship with ourselves as a couple. So, and then we would do all these things. We went to soup kitchens, and she did stuff and we did stuff together. And so we were here beautifying Chicago. So all my friends, Jay Kim and Christine and Mia and all of them, Carrie, Ed, all of them were doing things beautifying Chicago. So I don't get it. I truly don't get these other people. And that's what we were doing, and I was doing it before. I've been doing it since a child, beautifying Chicago. And I continued on with our relationship with Jen. And then I get into these things and I get sidetracked. And so then I go in and I'm with David. He's devout, and we get into these things, and I start getting into rebuilding churches like New Life, or New Life does, and brings new life into churches. But I was doing this, working with them more deeply on the existing congregation, working through their financials, their structure, their promotional strategies, how to create fellowship, how to build out small groups, and so on. And I was doing it with Betsy and my other client, Linda. And I was going to get into more of this, and that's a direction. I even told David that I was moving, whether he was on board, but even if he wasn't, that's a direction I was going. And again, taken off track every time from God's mission. And so you keep on interfering with God's mission. Like, the Blues Brothers, they're from Chicago. Of all movies, where was that movie shot? Chicago. What was that about? Being on a mission from God. That I grew up with that here in Chicago. That this movie was about a mission from God they were on. The Blues Brothers. They were on a mission from God. So, again, I don't understand, that was the premise of the movie. And so it's a great premise. It's Chicago, the Blues Brothers, and they're supporting an orphanage. And when I went to NCPC, I supported an orphanage. I supported the Little Flowers Project, which works with children, but it's an orphanage. It's an orphanage that works with children who are disabled. So I was trying to bring them out of disability, and you got me sidetracked and out of that. I didn't want them to be disabled. I can catch them young, I can rebuild them, and they can grow up and not be disabled. I can minimize any type of negativity in their mind, in their body, in their spirit. And so I got involved in these things. That's another thing that I was involved in Platinum. Through April making me aware of it, then I got involved in it, and I was trying to get deeper involved in it, and everybody takes me off a track where I was supposed to be compared to where I am. And I'm nowhere near where I'm supposed to be. So you keep on screwing up with God's plan. And I'm telling you, as I warned you in 2016, you mess with me in any way, shape, or form, you're going to be condemned. But you keep on interfering. For the last 10 years, you keep on getting me off a track. You keep on interfering with God's plan. You keep on interrupting me. You keep on interfering me. There shouldn't even be any homeless people walking around Chicago. But you interfered with that. So, you keep on interfering. And it seems like you're doing that so you can lie, cheat, steal, and deceive. And that makes you unbelievably the Antichrist and demons. That makes you the filthiest of filth, the disgust of disgust, the disgrace of disgrace. If you're doing that to me, you're unbelievably in for a world of hurt. Hurt that you will never get out of. Hurt that is unfathomable pain. Part of my first breakdown, and I told you this, that my pain that I went through was like going to hell and back. The pain was so severe, so deep, it was unfathomable. Nothing in this second breakdown, pain-wise, even if I have all these things, it didn't reach the severity of pain, and I was in incredible shape. I couldn't have handled it if I wasn't in this superior shape. God prepares you for it. But you don't understand the magnitude of pain. So, again, I understand that. Like Jesus descended into hell and back, well, he has to understand the severity of hell, the pain, as he will judge the quick and the dead. And to be able to judge people, I had to suffer greatly. Had to. That was done. Now I was reborn, per se. And it started when I was 38, the year that Jesus died. So it was interesting, all these things that line up, but you say they're coincidence. And if you know anything about coincidences, well, once you get past 3 things that line up, they tend not to be coincidence anymore. It tends to be impossible for it not to be what I say it is. So make no mistake about that if you know anything about statistical analysis. So once you move past 3, 4, 5, it becomes impossible for it to be anything else. So, anyways, you get to see the principle, or I should say Prudential, the Rock. And the funny thing is, it's the Prudential in Great Britain is owned by Jackson, another company. Prudential here is separate. Both called Prudential. So when you go overseas and you see Prudential, and this is a problem for them, international marketing, they have to use a different name in Great Britain because that company is called Prudential and that's owned by Jackson. Prudential, Great Britain company here is called Jackson. Not Jackson National, called Jackson. And they use a different name here because of Prudential. So what is this Prudential overseas? They have to use a different name. They can't use the name Prudential. So it's like John Hancock has a broker-dealer. It's Singapore. So Signature is powered by John Hancock. So they have to say some other name, like Jackson here is powered by Prudential, but it would be misleading for them. See, that's the problem. And people are like, oh, you're Prudential here? No, that's Prudential USA. See, Manulife bought John Hancock and merged its Manulife operation into John Hancock. So Manulife, it's Manulife in Canada, John Hancock in the United States, but it's all Manulife. They run under the banner of John Hancock in the United States. They bought John Hancock Life Insurance. But they have a problem, Prudential. What are they going to be called overseas, and how are they going to link the overseas component to the domestic component? And Jackson has the same problem. It's Prudential in Britain, Jackson here. Well, it's confusing. If you're from Britain, you come here and you're like, oh, Prudential, I'm going to go move my money over to Prudential. Not the same organization. You mean you need to move your money to Jackson. So it gets very confusing when you do this, when people move around the world, and people here move to Great Britain and are like, oh, Prudential, I like it. I have a Prudential annuity in that. I'll go see a Prudential advisor in Great Britain. And they're like, oh, you have Prudential. Well, that's Prudential USA. We're a different Prudential. And so that's the problem. Like Home Depot and Menards and Lowe's, are they going to be able to use that name in every country? Because the greatest thing is to be able to use the same name in every country. So when they come from China and they come here, like Walmart in China is Walmart. And when they come to the United States, they're like, oh, there's a Walmart. So they brand each other. So when people come from other parts of the world, like in Europe, it's Walmart. And they come to the United States, they find a Walmart. So sometimes it might be better to use another name. But when Prada goes here, it's Prada here, it's Prada in Italy. Hopefully they bought the name in other countries. And so with Christian Dior in that, because if not, somebody else could have bought the rights to Apple in China. Remember the fake Apple store? Well, if they bought the rights to the name Apple in China and China didn't register, Apple didn't register it in China, then it's not a fake Apple store. It's the Chinese Apple store. So when you do global, you have to be ahead of the game and make sure you secure your name, or you're going to have to do something else because those people lock it up. And that was the problem when we did the web here. All these people locked up and searched on the corporations and then locked up the names of the corporations before they got there because they didn't have their web people. And so we expand the internet and everything. And what happens? People do this and then they sold domains to people, just bought the name and they wanted the name and they paid millions for their name. They basically held them hostage. Ron did that, a guy that we owned, Great Lakes Financial. Well, Ron owned the name Great Lakes Financial, not Signature, not John Hancock. And when Ron was replaced by Nick, we wanted the website, we wanted everything, all of our branding and everything. Well, Ron refused to give it out of spite. He wouldn't give it to John Hancock. He wouldn't give it to Signature. He held it. He wasn't going to sell it because he was ticked that they removed him as managing partner. And what happened? We had to rebrand everything. So I came up with the name Platinum Wealth Solutions. That was my name. I came up with Platinum. And then we have Platinum Wealth Solutions Texas and that. That's all my name. That's all my intellectual property. I came up with the name. So, but the point is, Ron wouldn't release the name. He wouldn't sell it. And we had to spend a ton of money rebranding ourselves. After all that money, Great Lakes, because we were near Lake Michigan and everything, now we have to rebrand everything. And so we have to rebrand everything. And it was big because we lose all that client recognition. And so now people aren't looking for my Great Lakes site. They were looking for my Platinum Wealth Solution. And Ron held the domain, so we couldn't redirect anything. He held that. And so we couldn't redirect anything from the old site. So we lost all that traffic. Everything that was built was gone. He couldn't use it himself, but we couldn't use it. And he just burned it out of spite. And that was his punishment, and that was his right. He owned it. He wasn't going to sell it. Let it burn. So I understand that. When people own things, they have a right. Like when I closed down my Facebook and made a note, anyone that hurts me, any solution I come up with medically, if that person hurt me, they have no access to that. It is my right to let them die. So make no mistake about that. And I put that on Facebook. And I put it on Twitter. I put it on LinkedIn. That if anyone hurts me, that anything I come up, cure with cancer or anything, they have to find something else. They can't use anything that was created with me. And I give you that with Ron. It's the same thing. He let it burn. So I can let you die. That is within my right. If you hurt me, perish. I'm not here to save you. You betrayed me. So you shouldn't be saved. What do you think about Judas in the Bible? What did Jesus say? Told the disciples to stand down. Don't save him. Let him perish. Jesus told them that. To let Judas perish. He hurt me. He betrayed me. Let him die. Let him perish. Do not save him. No begging, throwing the money back, no pleading, no denouncing. The disciples, Paul and all of them, did nothing. They didn't run to, oh, Judas, we'll save you. You got another. No. Jesus told them, let him die. So I closed down my stuff and I made that announcement. Anyone who hurts me in any way, shape, or form perishes. Go find your own solution. And that's fine with me. They can save you. I want nothing to do with you if you hurt me. I want nothing to do with you. I want you to be put to waste, as Jesus let Judas be put to waste, as Ron allowed Great Lakes Financial to be put to waste. So it is my right. So my property. So a pharmaceutical company has a right to pull a drug anytime it wants. It's their property. You don't own it, they own it. And if they don't want to give it to you, it's their right not to give it to you. Make no mistake about it. So if they choose, and we go to war against countries, like say we go to war against Saudi Arabia, all the American pharmaceutical companies can pull all the drugs immediately. That's another trade leverage they have. To pull all that pharmaceutical, all those medical resources. Stop them immediately. We train a lot of doctors and nurses in the military. We provide a lot of. Bill Gates just shuts them off to a country. The Gates Foundation. You hurt Michael Olson, and it's shut off immediately. We don't care who perishes. It's a no-go situation. And so if you cross the red line, you chose to die. Then your people have a problem with your leadership. But they're supposed to pull the plug. Do not resuscitate. So that's another thing that we have over. Working with Canada, Great Britain, and our other partners who come up with this. Even Taiwan. We can pull the chips immediately. And that's why we protect Taiwan. So if China goes off reservation, we can pull the chips automatically. We can shut down and destroy the facilities in Taiwan. That's why they need facilities over here as a backup. So we can just burn them, implode them, so the Chinese can't have them. Truly, you just blow it up. And so what? They invade, they take over, but they don't get the technology infrastructure, what they want. You just destroy it. We did that with our embassy in Iran, but the thing is, we didn't burn all the stuff. We shredded it, and they pasted a lot of it together. We only burned a certain amount. We should have torched the building. It's not a church. And so we should have imploded the structure. So again, we can just do that. So there's ways that we can, like I told you, of terminating things with people. So there's ways that we can pull the strings on these countries. And remember, that's why it's big if they're American chartered. They're American corporation. And if they're Japanese partners, they pull theirs. They're in alliance with us. And they can pull their pharmaceuticals and everything else. So it's a way we can pull our food resources. They get a lot of pork and other things. Truly. So we can make them hurt unbelievably. So again, these are other ways to put the screws to them. So we have to think about this and how we go about things and how we can put the screws to people as we make them more wealthy and we build their infrastructure and everything else. We have to be able to fight on multiple fronts. And we have to have corporations. Remember Ronald Reagan? What did he do to American corporations and German corporations? And the German government was supposed to enforce it as well. And they failed to enforce it with certain German corporations, but not sell sensitive machinery to the Russians. Certain precise machinery could not be sold to Russia. But there are German companies that violated that agreement and sold them certain equipment. And it was precision equipment. And so Reagan did this embargo, which made their military more obsolete. So it was a way to stick it to them. Another way to crumble their military where it can't compete. And I don't think they're open. But again, we have to figure out ways to stick it to them. and I put out ways to protect me, and some reason you ignore all my wishes and you go around terrorizing me. The deal was anyone that hurts me in any way, shape, or form, they're cut off. They're cut off. Period. I don't care if it's the President of the United States, a Chicago police officer. They're null and void. They're done. I don't care. They hurt me. They terrorize me. A Buffalo Grove police officer. I don't give a crap who it is. You cut them off immediately. Go find another thing from somebody else. Not with us.